Walter's getting his chair. On 3, 2, 1. Welcome to another segment of Michigan Conservative Roundtable. We're regular guys who live in the state of Michigan, and we're conservatives, and we're going to talk about the topics of the day. Today's topic is going to be on the new Green Deal and what it will mean for all of us. I have a copy of the new Green Deal here. I have read it. It's only about 14 pages long.
Poor man.
It's very readable. If you want to get online and find that, it's not too hard to find. It's typical leftism, blames the United States for everything, goes into a bunch of things that really aren't true, like life expectancy is decreasing, wages are stagnant, we have the top 1% earning all of the money, which of course they're the top 1%, so they're earning a vast majority of it. Yes, that's true, but they're only earning it because other people aren't. It just goes on and on. It talks about responsibilities that the government, that the Congress has that they clearly do not. It talks about promoting justice and equality by stopping current, present, future, historic oppression of indigenous peoples, economic communities of color, migrant communities, disindustrialized communities, depopulated rural communities, the poor, low-income workers, women. And I'll touch on that for a second, this nonsense about war on women. I'd like anyone out there to tell me what rights women don't have. It gets into the pay disparity. That's easily explained away because women don't work as many hours as men, so they don't make as much. It's that simple. So where is this going to take us down the road? TJ, what do you say?
Well, I have always been saying since President Bill Clinton that the Democrats were closet socialists. And now with AOC and her running around saying what she's saying, they've pretty much come out of the closet. And when we were going to do this segment, I wanted to get into some of the details of what socialism, communism are. And because I'm not sure if everyone understands how it affects us. You know, with socialism, and this is the way I understand it, and if I butcher it, Marty, help me. But socialism, the government it eliminates basically private property. It's kind of a collective approach to production and distribution of goods. And what happens is, and to quote Margaret Thatcher, and she said it in a couple different interviews, so she always says it a little bit differently, but in her different interviews, she would say the trouble with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money. And I don't disagree with her. I believe that to be the case. And here's the problem. In socialism, as you begin to run out of other people's money, the socialist does not say to the capitalist, oh, okay, you were right, I was wrong. Oh no, they dig in because they haven't tried hard enough. And it's that digging in that leads to communism. And there's kind of a fine line between socialism and communism, but from the way I understand it, as the socialist digs in to a more hardline communism, it follows Marxism. So you could think of Marxism as a kind of a Marxism, in that now you don't own anything, and you don't control anything, and as I stumble around with what else to say, Marty, help me out here.
Well, the thing about socialism and communism is they're kind of flavors, really, and one just leads to the other. One emanates from the other, you might say. I'm not sure that socialism totally does away with private property, but communism certainly does. And socialism is going to lead to communism. That's just its nature. I absolutely, positively, 110% agree with you about the point about socialism digging in. They don't want to give up on their philosophy, even though it's clearly flawed, clearly failed. Venezuela, Venezuela, Venezuela. We know exactly what's going on down there, and it's recent, and people still won't take a minute and sit up and pay attention and go, wow, maybe this won't work, which is exactly what Terry was just saying. So
Venezuela was an OPEC member, and as an OPEC member was, I believe, when we're going back to the 80s, 70s, and 80s, the richest South American country. They thought their oil production would fund their pursuit of socialism and communism, and now today they're stealing animals out of the zoo to eat.
yeah. I mean, there's a reason they had for years, and it was Hugo Chavez, the 19-cent a gallon gasoline.
Yeah.
It's because he could depress the price just to keep the people happy. But it was an artificial depression of the pricing, and that's just one example. There's a myriad examples of this in Venezuela, which is why the country's went down the road it has. They suppress prices internally, try to get as much money as they can externally, and then you reach a point where the balance sheet just doesn't match up anymore. And that's what's going to happen with socialism everywhere.
Well, one of the impacts it has on our life that you have to consider is, I like to watch the show, I don't know if you fellas have seen it, 60 Days In, where you have a regular person who goes into jail to essentially be a spy for the sheriff, to let him know what's really going on in the jail, how drugs are getting in, so on and so forth. And as these people get released, the first thing they talk about every time is the things they missed. Going out to get a coffee, going to a movie, moving about freely. If this AOC plan were ever to come to fruition, you can kiss all of that goodbye. You're talking about tens of millions of people being unemployed. The auto industry, transportation industry, the people who produce our power, all those jobs are gone. Hey, but she's got an answer for that, because we're going to pay people, we're going to give an income to people who she says, if they're not willing to work. Well, who the hell's going to work? What person in their right mind would, why would I go to work to get what he's getting for free? It just makes no sense. And
I wouldn't work for Terry's wages.
yeah, what you don't have is what you got to think about. You're not gonna go to Starbucks, because there won't be a Starbucks. You're gonna stand in long lines for bread. You're gonna not have the choices in food you have.
You won't have gasoline.
You won't need gasoline, because she's going to eliminate all of the cars and replace them with electric cars, which is it's silly. You know,
We make our food with internal combustion engines, okay?
if you said in 1,000 years let's do this, okay. But she's talking about 10 years. The Earth is we're all going to die in 10 years. How many times have we heard this? These wackos like Al Gore, he said 12 years ago that we only had 10 years left, yet here we are. When communism really takes hold, the thing that people are really going to have the biggest trouble with is there will be no dissension. You look at Joseph Stalin, and he was all these things the millennials are: hip, cool, intellectual, atheist. And when he got in power, he had to kill 60 million people who didn't like it. How many things don't you like? How many things would you like to get killed for? Because you just want to speak out against the government. We bitch a storm up in this country every day on social media. What would happen to that?
Yeah. It would be gone. That's what would happen to it. I tell you what, I'm not a big fan of George Will, but he says some things I think were very profound, and one of those is, when the data don't jive with common sense, you doubt the data.
Yes.
Here they are telling us that if we don't do all this stuff right now, in 10 years, the environment is going to be totally ruined, humanity is going to be totally destroyed. Well, we've already got the proof of Al Gore that it's been 12 years and it hasn't happened since he said it. Now we're going to believe that it's going to happen in the next 10 years now with this Green New Deal. I'm going to tell you something. If the world is destroyed in the next 10 years, it will not be because of a lack of good environmental stewardship. It'll be of something worse, nuclear holocaust maybe, but it will have nothing to do with the provisions of this new Green Deal.
And we're supposed to change our life and the structure of our country completely on the word of a nitwit.
Yeah, yeah.
Who thinks that she's going to spend the $3 billion from the tax abatement of taxes that are never paid. Mm-hmm. She's cost the city of New York $27 billion in tax revenue and 25,000 jobs. It's insane. She's such a...
She has no idea about job creation. No real understanding.
Well, she has an
of job
economics
creation.
degree, so much for the educated in this country.
I won't disagree with that. I tell you what it's about. What it's ultimately about is conservatives want to govern. That means they want to keep a system of fair play and make sure the laws are right and just and everything so that people have a decent opportunity to go out and make something of themselves and for themselves. The progressives want to rule, and that's a critical difference. Terry and Mike have both touched on it. You know, they want to control every aspect of our lives. You know what? This is not a new
education.
To include education, yeah.
To include education.
Exactly, everything. To include everything. At the end of the day, this is not a new Green Deal. This is a new Red Deal.
Yes.
It's as simple as that.
Well, Bill de Blasio has already talked about wanting to do away with the ownership of private property and businesses. That's straight up communism. They're
There
not
goes
even
my
hiding
business.
anymore. The president has driven these people out of the darkness into the light, and it's into the darkness that they want to take us.
I just kind of wanted to add also, a lot of this starts with class envy. The less fortunate, for whatever reason, are envious of the more fortunate, for whatever reason, and a lot of it comes from class envy. Okay, somehow there's this mindset of you didn't earn that. Remember that?
I remember. Elizabeth Warren
you
said
didn't
it.
build that. You didn't earn
You
that.
didn't
you know,
build that.
Barack Obama said it.
that kind of nonsense. But it's set out of class envy. And the reason why I bring up class envy is, as these guys know, my all-time anti-communist, anti-socialist hero is Margaret Thatcher. I love watching her videos. I can never seem to get enough of her. And in my best Margaret Thatcher imitation, I will try to say, you would rather the poor be poor, provided the less were less rich. You would rather this than this. And she does that in a video. And what she's saying is the communist or the socialist, and she's saying that to the Labor Party guys over there, because they were mentioning how the gap between the rich and the poor had widened under her. And maybe it did widen. Maybe it was this. But if they have their way, it's going to be this. Okay? And I don't know if people get that. I just don't know if anyone really gets that.
If you know Scripture, and I'm no expert by any means, but I do know Jesus said, the poor will always be with us.
Yeah, that
That tells me everything I need to know. Doesn't mean we can't help them. Doesn't mean we don't have an obligation to help people out who are destitute. But thank you, Walter.
My apologies. Walter wanted my attention.
Yeah, we have a producer on the offside here.
All right, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this segment, guys. We want to remind everybody to subscribe, like, please comment. We will reply. We will respond to your comments if you make them. And to be safe, watch your six, and don't tread on me.